You are listening to the Hope, Hustle, Heal podcast.
I think one of the hardest parts of heartbreak is that after it happens, you still crave love, even when you're hurt, even when you're grieving, even when you're trying to rebuild yourself. And sometimes that combination leads you directly into situations that are so absurd, you genuinely have no choice but to laugh about them later. Because dating after heartbreak can become really complicated emotionally. On one hand, you're healing, but you still want connection, and you're rebuilding, but you still want comfort. And you're learning yourself again while simultaneously trying to meet strangers who may or may not have a secret fiance or addiction issues or a wife they forgot to mention. So today, we are talking about dating after heartbreak. The healing part, the awkward part, the hopeful part, and yes, the completely unhinged part too. I'm going to be sharing a few of my absurd dating disaster stories, so you're not going to want to miss it. Welcome back to Hope, Hustle, Heal. Hey, I'm Amy, and this is Season 1, Episode 5. Today, we're talking about dating after long-term heartbreak, which honestly feels less like romance and more like an emotional obstacle course mixed with some serious investigative journalism. I've been divorced 6 years, and I've definitely had my share of hopeful moments and letdowns and heartbreak and then some. So if you're in your heartbreak or dating era, this one's for you. Because after a long relationship ends, you're grieving, you're rebuilding, you're trying to discover who you are, and at the same time, you still want companionship, and you still want connection, and you still want someone to choose you. And navigating all of that emotionally while trying to date in today's world, it can feel absolutely chaotic. But I do have to say, I think one of the hardest emotional pieces after a major breakup is watching someone else move on while you're still emotionally processing everything. When you spend years building a life with someone, it can feel incredibly disorienting watching that chapter close while you're still grieving the future you thought you were going to have. The routines, the traditions, the comfort of familiarity. Ultimately, the life you imagined is gone. And when you're still trying to emotionally process everything and you're laying flat on your back, watching that person continue life with someone else can feel extremely overwhelming. And I remember feeling this pressure to emotionally catch up. Like I needed to rebuild quickly and prove that I was okay. No one was putting that pressure on me. I was definitely putting it on myself. But looking back now, I see that very clearly. I wasn't dating because I had healed. I was dating because I was grieving. And there's a huge difference between those two things. So looking back now, when I replay it all through my head, early on after my divorce, I was trying to recreate the feeling of what I had just lost without actually processing the loss itself. And I wasn't necessarily looking for alignment. I was looking for reassurance and comfort and validation and proof that life would still work out and proof that I was still lovable, aka rebound situations so many of us are familiar with, where we try to move on quickly and band-aid our heartbreak. And when you date from that emotional space, you can rush emotional connection and you can ignore red flags and you can attach to potential instead of reality. So naturally, I entered the dating app era, and let me tell you, what an absolute disaster. And dating apps after a long relationship feel absolutely ridiculous because you go from building a life with one person for years to suddenly trying to summarize your life into like 6 photos and a bio. Completely insane. So after countless disappointing dates, I genuinely started feeling exhausted by the entire process. I had situations where people looked nothing like their photos, or they were super emotionally unavailable, or fresh out of breakups, or even people who were very much still in relationships. And I realized very quickly that hurt people often find other hurt people, which can create chaos really, really fast. And oh my gosh, I was awful at dating apps. Absolutely terrible. Because I'm such a busy person day to day, I genuinely could not keep up with constantly being on my phone and talking to strangers all day and answering the same questions like, what do you do for fun? How was your weekend? What music do you listen to? Oh my gosh, I legit hated it all. So I would go through these little cycles where I'd think, okay, maybe I'm ready to put myself out there again. So I'd download the apps and start swiping, talk to a couple people. Then I would immediately get annoyed with answering the same questions over and over again and the constant messaging. So then I would delete the apps completely, take a break, usually tackle a reno or some sort of house project. And then a few months later, the cycle would repeat when I felt emotionally ready for connection again. And honestly, it became this like ridiculous repeated cycle that happened several times. And at one point, because I got tired of repeating the same introductory conversation over and over again, I literally wrote an about me paragraph in the notes section of my phone, like a little copy and paste introduction kind of thing, which sounds ridiculous, but I was trying to be efficient as best as I could because I was so tired of it all. So every time I matched with someone new, I'd paste my little intro message. So anyway, one day, I matched with this guy, sent my usual copy and paste introduction, and he replied and said, Uh, you've sent me that before. Oh my gosh, I wanted to absolutely crawl into a hole and disappear. I was absolutely horrified. Apparently, I had matched with him before during one of my delete and re download the apps phases, and I completely forgot. So I unmatched pretty quickly, needless to say. And it's also safe to say that I was clearly not emotionally invested in actually getting to know someone at that point. So a few months later, I met someone. He seemed great. We dated for a couple months, like 2 or 3, I think. We had cute dates, and he'd come to my house and I'd go to his house, and we both agreed we were really happy with where everything was heading. So then one day I get a message from one of my girlfriends who said she had seen him on one of her friend's Instagram stories in like a cutesy little photo saying, babe, love you, whatever, something like that. So after some deep investigative journalism, she and I figured out that he was very much in a relationship, engaged actually. Girls figure that shit out so fast. We figured out the days he was alternating seeing us, and it was just days before Christmas, and his poor fiance had gifts under the tree for him from her and her kid, like just a wild situation. I also truly don't know how someone can juggle and coordinate all that. I could never. So I remember sitting there thinking, how is this real? Like, am I being filmed right now? How old are we, and how is this what dating is? So that experience taught me very quickly that not everyone enters dating with honest intentions, unfortunately. And after long term relationships where trust existed for years, that realization can feel incredibly jarring, especially when that's your first experience entering the dating world. So you assume people are operating with the same honesty you are. And unfortunately, that's just not always true. So, after a few in person dating disasters, I decided my free time was limited. So, it was so limited that I started doing video chats before agreeing to dates. I figured it would be a practical way to kind of see if there was a connection before giving up hours for a date. And this one time, oh my gosh, I was chatting with this guy. I remember his job was a behavior specialist, and trust me, this matters. So, anyway, we agreed to a video chat, and he was at his cottage. So, he asked me if I wanted to see the lake, and I said, sure, I love the water. So, happy to. Anyway, he pans his camera around, shows the lake, and then says, I'm going to set my phone down. Give me 1 sec. So, I said, okay, no problem. So, he set his phone down on the dock with a very clear image of the lake, and out of nowhere, I hear a big splash. He actually jumped in for a quick dip. And if that isn't weird enough, then he actually goes to the edge of the dock and climbs out and pulls himself out, not even wearing a bathing suit. Oh my gosh, guys, his eggplant was literally hanging in front of the camera. What the hell? I was lost for words. Like, I don't even remember what I said to get off of that call. I just remember thinking, how are you a behavior specialist and you think this is okay? The conversation wasn't even flirty in that way, so I was horrified. So anyway, then I realized maybe these video calls aren't working. So I took a break from any sort of swiping or video calls. Then a little while later, I tried dating someone from a mutual friend group, and people often say that's a good way to see if there's a connection, so someone will say, yeah, you would be a great fit for this person. So I gave it a fair shot, but honestly, it didn't work for me. I felt like he had everything I wanted on paper, but in person, that connection just wasn't there for me, and I felt like I enjoyed him more as a friend. So I think a big part of growing emotionally is realizing that not every single connection will become long term. Sometimes people are good people, but just not your people romantically. And yes, physical attraction matters, connection matters, chemistry matters, and compatibility matters. And I used to feel guilty saying all of those like wish list items, but now I don't because settling helps nobody. And once you've experienced heartbreak and disappointment from dating, you learn what you're looking for in someone and what you absolutely won't accept. So then, eventually, I went out with two girlfriends for a girls' night with like zero intention of meeting anyone, just a girls' night out. And to my surprise, I met someone that night. And we had this super intense eye contact moment. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I need to get to know this person. We had immediate chemistry. And after so many disappointing dating experience, that felt exciting to have met someone organically. And we hit it off immediately. So many great dates. He was a kid at heart. We had a lot of fun together. Eventually, he met my kids, and they absolutely loved him. So then, about a year later, he moved in with the kids and I. And for the first time since my divorce, I had faith in dating and it felt like maybe I had found something real again. But one thing I've learned about healing is that sometimes when you want something so badly, you ignore your intuition. And I've always had a strong intuition. But I genuinely believe that I was just learning relationships and boundaries and what dating was because I'd been with my ex husband for 10 years. We started dating when I was like 19 or 20. So I needed to learn what dating in my 30s even looked like. So, anyway, this guy, there were small things early on that I didn't love, but I kept rationalizing them because when you finally feel hopeful after heartbreak, you want it to work. And in the beginning, it was just a couple small things. We would talk through it. One thing I have to say is he was really great at communicating if we didn't align on something. But eventually, more serious issues started surfacing, like addiction issues. And then there was some major legal issues, which was scary. And then ultimately, severe financial instability. So there was a moment during that relationship where I realized that there were a few people expecting me to financially and emotionally overextend myself in ways that were completely unrealistic. And slowly I started realizing that this wasn't a situation I could expose myself or my kids to any longer. And that was another huge lesson for me because women often get conditioned to over help or to over carry or even over function. And ultimately, we become the emotional caretakers for literally everybody. So I had to learn that love should not require abandoning yourself and your own morals or sacrificing what you spent years building for yourself. I also learned that boundaries are necessary even when you care deeply about someone. So, for the first time in my entire life, I chose myself and ended the relationship. It wasn't easy. It was about 3 days before Christmas, and we had gifts for him under our tree and everything, but it had to stop. It had to. And looking back now, that was growth because the old version of me probably would have over sacrificed herself to save that person. So after that relationship ended, I reconnected with my high school sweetheart. It was not expected and it happened sooner than I would have preferred. We kind of slid into each other's DMs on Instagram and we agreed to meet up and grab a drink, which honestly felt surreal. In high school, we were one of those couples that everyone knew. He was head of soccer, I was head of cheerleading, like one of those situations, massive friend group and always at events and parties and athletic banquets and genuinely living our best lives. So there was just something emotionally strange about reconnecting with someone connected to such a different version of me. It brought back nostalgia and comfort and memories, and we would reminisce about everything we had been through before. So that connection, it felt really special, and it did for a while. Um, but over time, we realized we just simply weren't aligned. He was incredibly difficult to communicate with, and I'm extremely communicative, almost too much. So naturally, that didn't work. I kept trying to explain how to communicate, but he just wasn't interested. And I think we probably stayed together longer than we should have. But sometimes history creates connection too without creating long term compatibility. And I actually touched on this last episode with regards to friends. Just because there's history does not mean that it's a healthy relationship to pursue. And learning that is really, really important, especially going into the dating world. So after that, I took a long break from dating. I felt really scorned and disappointed, and I was bitter, hands down, had zero faith in dating at all. I think I took a good 6 months to be single and was totally in my me era. My business was thriving, and I was busy, and my kids were good, and like all was good. Then eventually, I met someone else organically. I went to a hockey game in Toronto, and we met in person in one of those boxes up top. And I was there with my friend, and he was there with my friend's cousin, random. But anyway, he was older than me, about 12 years older, very grounded, very calm. It was a really beautiful relationship, and we traveled together. We went to Japan. We had some amazing experiences. He was creative and artistic, so I loved that we both had that in common too. He truly was a really good person, and things were going really, really well. I have nothing bad to say about him whatsoever. But then my cancer diagnosis happened. And that changed everything emotionally for me. I'm definitely not the same person now that I was before my diagnosis. And one thing I've learned about myself is that when I'm deeply overwhelmed emotionally, my instinct is to retreat inward and to handle things alone and to protect myself by isolating. And when my diagnosis happened in May of 2025, I didn't know what my future was going to look like. I didn't know what my treatment would look like. I didn't know how vulnerable I was emotionally prepared to be. And because that relationship was relatively new, I actually pushed him away and broke up with him. Not because he did something wrong, but because fear changes people and trauma responses are real. So I spent most of 2025 dealing with my diagnosis, which I will share on a later episode. So I've been single for about a year now, and apparently, apparently my dating life is still committed to keeping things interesting. Even recently, I happened to meet someone organically. This person came to my door, and we had a super cute eye contact moment. We flirted a little bit, and at first, it felt refreshing that it was completely unexpected. No apps, no weird bios, no awkward copy and paste, or hey, you should meet my friend kind of thing. Just two humans talking and connecting. Amazing. So anyway, being that it was unexpected, we exchanged numbers and started messaging. And I actually felt a lot of excitement because being single for so long felt really nice to have some sort of a connection with someone again. Except within a ridiculously short amount of time, this man became what can only be described as a stage 5 clinger, like full wedding crashers energy. At one point, he actually asked me where our kids would live someday. Our kids. Sir, we haven't even gone on a date yet. We were only messaging at this point, and it had only been a few days, and it was just wild. So then, and then out of nowhere, it came out that he was still married, like sleeping in the same bed as his wife, still married, although he claimed to have been separated for 7 months. Like, honestly, at this point, I don't know if I should entertain dating again or start a documentary series. And moments like that genuinely make you sit there questioning reality. And at some point, humor became a huge part of healing for me because if I had stayed emotionally attached to every bizarre dating experience, oh my gosh, I probably wouldn't have made it. And I think one thing I've learned is that not every dating experience is meant to become a long-term relationship. Some are lessons and teach you about yourself, and some are redirections and put you on a different path. And some are just ridiculous stories that you're going to share with your girlfriends later over a glass of wine. But looking back now, the biggest lesson of all is that I'm no longer afraid to be alone. I can go places alone. I can travel alone. I can be a third wheel at a friend's house for dinner and enjoy my own company and even just sit in peace by myself. And that freedom feeling is incredibly powerful because once you stop fearing being alone, you stop settling. And healing has taught me what behaviors I will and will not accept. It's taught me what communication looks like and what emotional safety should feel like. It's also taught me what manipulation and narcissism feels like and what inconsistency feels like. And once you truly heal, your standards naturally change because your peace becomes non-negotiable. So maybe you're dating after heartbreak right now. Maybe you're exhausted. Whoops. Maybe you're exhausted by dating in general. Maybe you're scared to trust again. Or maybe you're realizing you rushed healing and you just need to pause. But please hear me. You're not failing. You're learning. And every relationship teaches you something. Even the ones that make you question humanity entirely, there's lessons in all of them. So remember, you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't need to force love out of fear, and you just need the courage to become someone who no longer abandons themselves for connection. So, if this episode resonated with you, be sure to subscribe to Hope, Hustle, Heal on Spotify so you don't miss an episode. We're going to keep having honest conversations about healing and confidence and relationships and becoming the strongest version of ourselves through life's hardest seasons. The right relationship should feel like peace, not confusion or chaos. And it certainly should not feel like living in survival mode. And once you learn that, it'll change everything. I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.